The sun had not yet appeared on the horizon when Samuel Anderson rose from his bed, as he had done for more than 40 years. The alarm clock didn't even have time to ring. His body was already synchronized with the rhythms of the ranch, a silent dance between man and land that had been repeating itself since he took over the property inherited from his father. At 58, Samuel carried on his face the marks of someone who had faced the scorching Montana sun and the storms that punished the region during the rainy months. His calloused hands told stories of fences raised, cattle tamed, and a lifetime dedicated to transforming every piece of land into productive pasture. "Good morning, old friend," he murmured as he passed through the kitchen, where the photo of Catherine, his wife who had passed away 5 years ago, still occupied a place of honor on the table. The loneliness weighed less when he maintained his morning conversations with the smiling image of the woman who had shared the best moments of life with him. Outside, the fresh pre-dawn air brought the familiar smell of damp earth and grass. Samuel breathed deeply, feeling invigorated. This was his church, his refuge, his kingdom. Good Hope Ranch, stretched for thousands of acres, an achievement representing decades of hard work and decisions that weren't always easy. Walking toward the corral, he greeted Joe, the foreman who was already preparing the horses for the morning patrol. "Morning, Joe. How was your night?" "Quiet, boss, but—" Joe hesitated, scratching his head beneath his faded hat. "There are some strange things happening around here." Samuel frowned. Joe was a man of few words and much experience. If something worried him, it deserved attention. "What kind of things?" "The animals are restless, you know. Just yesterday, 3 head of cattle disappeared from the north pasture, and it wasn't theft, boss. There were no signs of trucks, no footprints of strangers." "Broken fence?" "Even worse. The electric fence is failing in the same area, always at the same spot. Jack tried to fix it yesterday, but this morning it was off again." Samuel nodded, concerned. The ranch operated like a Swiss watch. Each piece had its function, each problem had its solution. Mysteries were not part of his vocabulary. "I'll take a look after lunch," he decided, mounting Cole, his faithful equine companion. The horse, a thoroughbred with shiny black coat, greeted his owner with a low neigh. It was a partnership that had lasted more than a decade. Cole knew every trail, every fence, every corner of the property better than any GPS. During the morning, while touring the pastures and talking with the employees, Samuel noticed the restlessness that Joe had mentioned. The cattle grazed in tighter groups than usual, as if seeking mutual protection. The horses constantly moved their ears, attentive to sounds he couldn't hear. Must be some new predator in the region, he thought, remembering stories circulating about mountain lions being spotted on neighboring properties. I'll have to take action before it becomes a bigger problem. At lunchtime, his daughter Melissa called from Grand Junction, where she worked as a veterinarian. Her voice always brought special relief to her father's heart. "Hi, Dad. How are things out there?" "Everything's in order, my daughter. And you? How's work at the clinic?" "Busy but good, Dad. I have some news to tell you." The excitement in Melissa's voice made Samuel smile. Since she was little, she had always had this gift of lighting up any conversation. "Go ahead, girl. I received an offer to work on a conservation project here in the region. It's about preserving local wildlife, especially big cats. The salary is excellent and—" "Conservation," Samuel interrupted, feeling a knot in his stomach. "Melissa, you know how I feel about these things. Those environmentalists just want to interfere with people who actually work for a living." The silence on the other end of the line was eloquent. Samuel knew he had touched a sensitive point. Melissa had always been passionate about animals, but he had hoped that her profession would keep her focused on domestic animals, not these modern ideas about preservation. "Dad, it's not quite like that. But we'll talk later, okay? I have to get back to work." After hanging up, Samuel stood looking at the horizon, where native forests still resisted in some areas of the property. These were areas he maintained due to legal requirements, but which he had always seen as wasted space, land that could be productive, generating jobs and income. In the afternoon, he decided to personally check the problematic electric fence. Cole, however, proved strangely reluctant to approach the area. The animal that had always been brave and reliable began to show signs of nervousness as they approached the border with the forest. "What's wrong, boy, seeing ghosts?" joked Samuel, stroking the horse's neck. But deep down, something inside him was also uneasy. The silence was different here. Even the birds seemed to avoid this region, and on the ground, marks that he couldn't fully identify drew a disturbing pattern in the still damp mud from the last rain. That night, while reviewing the ranch papers in his office, Samuel couldn't get the strange sensation that had accompanied him throughout the day out of his mind. Cole, normally calm in the pasture, remained agitated, even with the arrival of night. Without knowing it, he was about to experience something that would question everything he had always believed in. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. The early morning brought with it a heavy silence, different from the usual morning concert that echoed through the pastures of Good Hope Ranch. Samuel woke before the sun, as always, but something in the air seemed charged with tension. Still, in his bedroom he heard a sound that made him jump out of bed, Cole neighing desperately in the pasture. It was a sound he had never heard from the animal, sharp, almost human in its desperation. Quickly putting on his boots and grabbing a flashlight, he ran outside. The waning moon offered little light, creating shadows that danced among the trees of the nearby forest. In the pasture he found Cole sweating, trembling, looking fixedly toward the forest. "Easy, boy, easy," he whispered, approaching the horse slowly. "What scared you like that?" Cole calmed slightly with his owner's presence, but remained alert, ears pointed toward the darkness of the forest. Samuel followed the animal's gaze and felt a shiver run down his spine. Two small yellowish lights shone among the trees, too distant to be fireflies, too large to be reflections. The eyes disappeared as soon as he pointed the flashlight in their direction. "Joe! Joe!" he shouted toward the foreman's house. The man appeared minutes later, still wearing his nightclothes, carrying a shotgun. "What happened, boss?" "There's something in the forest. Cole is terrified, and I saw eyes shining in there." Joe examined the ground around them with the experience of someone who had spent his life dealing with wild nature. "Boss, do you see these marks here in the mud?" Samuel pointed the flashlight where Joe indicated. In the damp soil, round and deep footprints marked a trail that came from the forest and continued through the pasture. "Mountain lion," murmured Joe, his voice heavy with concern. "It's a cougar track, boss, and by the size it's a big animal." Samuel's heart raced. In 40 years of ranching, he had never had a direct encounter with a mountain lion. He knew they existed in the region, but they had always kept their distance. From humans. Why would it come here? There's enough prey in the forest. "I don't know, boss, but something's bringing it close to the property." That morning, Samuel cancelled the usual patrol and called a meeting with all the employees. On the kitchen table, he spread out a map of the ranch and marked the points where problems had been occurring. "Folks, the situation is serious," he began, looking at the concerned faces around the table. "We have a large predator roaming the property. I don't want anyone working alone in areas near the forest, always in pairs, always armed." Jack, responsible for maintaining the fences, raised his hand. "Boss, yesterday when I went to fix the electric fence, I found something strange. The wire wasn't cut or broken. It looked like something had gone over it, forcing the posts." "What? Do you mean forcing?" The posts were bent as if a very heavy weight had pressed down on the wires, and there were deep scratches on the wood, claw marks. Mary, the ranch cook, who had remained silent until then, spoke up. "Mr. Samuel, my mother always said that when forest animals start approaching houses, it's because something bad is happening." "In the forest." "Mary, I respect your mother and her beliefs, but let's focus on the facts," replied Samuel, although the woman's words echoed in his mind. For the rest of the morning, he tried to maintain a normal routine, but the invisible presence of the mountain lion hung over the ranch like a heavy cloud. The employees worked in groups, talking in low voices, constantly looking over their shoulders. Around noon, the phone rang. It was Dr. Richard Miller, the veterinarian from the local cooperative. "Samuel, I heard you're having problems with predators out there." "News travels fast around here, Doctor. It's not just your ranch. I received 3 calls today from properties in the region reporting the same kind of problem. Missing cattle, damaged fences, nervous animals. Samuel felt a weight in his stomach. If it wasn't an isolated case, it meant something bigger was happening. Do you have any theory? Well, it could be that something is pushing these animals out of their usual territories. Deforestation. In some area, lack of prey or even the presence of other larger predators. And what do you recommend? For now, basic precautions. But I think it would be interesting to contact the Fish and Wildlife Service or a specialist biologist. They can help understand what's happening without having to resort to more drastic measures. After hanging up the phone, Samuel was thoughtful. The idea of involving environmental agencies deeply bothered him. Throughout his life, he had seen these groups as obstacles to development, people who didn't understand the reality of country life. In the late afternoon, while helping Joe reinforce the fences near the forest, he heard a sound that made him stop everything he was doing. It was a low, deep growl that came from the forest. It wasn't loud or aggressive. It seemed almost melancholic. "Boss, she's there," whispered Joe, discreetly pointing to a shadow among the trees. Samuel followed the foreman's gaze and saw it. A magnificent mountain lion, imposing in stature, observing them from a safe distance. The animal showed no aggression, only cautious curiosity. Its golden eyes seemed to study them, as if trying to understand their intentions. For a few minutes that seemed like hours, man and feline observed each other in silence. Samuel felt something strange move in his chest, a mixture of fear, admiration, and a strange sensation of recognition. The mountain lion emitted another low growl, turned around, and disappeared into the forest, leaving only the echo of its presence and a disturbing certainty in the rancher's mind. That encounter had been only the beginning. The night brought nightmares to Samuel. He dreamed of golden eyes following him through the ranch, of Cole neighing in desperation, and of Catherine's voice whispering words he couldn't fully understand. He woke up sweating, his heart racing, and a strange feeling that something fundamental was changing in his life. In the kitchen, while preparing his morning coffee, the phone rang again. It was Melissa. "Dad, I need to talk to you about yesterday. I've been thinking about our conversation." "Daughter, if it's about this conservation work, I don't even want to hear about it." "Dad, listen to me. I received concerning information. Here at the clinic, there's a female mountain lion with a cub roaming the Carson City region. She's been spotted on several properties." Samuel almost dropped his coffee cup. "How do you know this?" "It's my job, Dad. The Wildlife Monitoring Network shares this information. And, Dad, she's not attacking out of aggression. She's desperate. Desperate, Melissa. This mountain lion almost invaded my property yesterday." "That's exactly what I'm talking about. Dad, they don't approach humans for pleasure. Something is forcing her to leave her natural territory." Samuel sat down heavily in the chair. His daughter continued. "The biologists believe that deforestation on neighboring ranches destroyed part of her habitat. She's looking for a safe place to raise her cub, and territory means survival for these animals." "And what do you want me to do? Hand over my ranch to the mountain lions?" "Dad, that's not it. But maybe it's time to think differently. You have preserved forest areas on the property, don't you?" "I have what the law requires, but those areas could be the solution. If we create a proper wildlife corridor, she might find a safe territory without interfering with the ranch's production." Samuel was silent, processing his daughter's words. It was difficult to accept that his worldview, built over decades, might be incomplete. "Dad, are you still there?" "I'm here, my daughter. I'm thinking. Can I come there this weekend? I want to see this situation up close, and I promise it won't be to cause problems, but to help find a solution." After hanging up, Samuel walked to the porch and stood, watching the pastures that stretched as far as the eye could see. Each acre of that land represented years of work, dreams fulfilled, the inheritance he wanted to leave for Melissa. Joe approached, bringing the morning report. "So, boss, how was your night?" "Restless, Joe, very restless." "Did the animal come back?" "Not last night, but Joe, tell me something. You grew up here in the region, right? How were things in the old days? The foreman settled into the chair beside him, taking off his hat and scratching his graying head. Well, boss, it was quite different. When I was a kid, there was a lot more forest. The mountain lions existed, of course, but each one in its own territory. They rarely came near. Properties. And what changed? Well, progress arrived, right? More ranches, more pasture, more people. The forest became small patches. The animals started to get squeezed. Do you think we did something wrong? Joe hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the question. Boss, it's not a matter of right or wrong, it's a matter of survival. You did what you had to do to support your family, raise your daughter, get on with life. But sometimes I wonder if we couldn't have done both things at the same time. Develop and preserve, you know? That afternoon, Samuel decided to do something he hadn't done in years. Ride to the most preserved part of his property, where the native forest still resisted in its original form. Cole, curiously, seemed calmer in this area than near the pastures. Upon entering the forest, Samuel was surprised by the diversity of sounds and colors that he had forgotten existed. The bird songs created a natural symphony. Colorful butterflies danced among the flowers, and a sense of peace that he hadn't experienced in many years took over his spirit. That's when he heard it. A soft mew, almost inaudible. Following the sound carefully, he discovered something that left him breathless. In a small clearing near a crystal-clear stream was a mountain lion cub. It was small, furry, with still undefined spots, and obviously lost. The animal saw him and instead of fleeing, emitted a sound that almost seemed like a call for help. Samuel dismounted slowly, his heart beating strongly. The cub was thin, clearly weak, and its eyes, like its mother's, golden and deep, looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope. "Where is your mother, little one?" he whispered, maintaining a safe distance. As if it had heard the question, a low growl echoed through the forest. The mother was nearby, and probably watching. Samuel understood at that moment that he wasn't just facing a predator. He was facing a family struggling to survive. Slowly, he returned to Cole and rode back to the ranch house, but the image of the cub wouldn't leave his mind. For the first time in his life, he began to question whether his definition of progress was really complete. That night, he called Melissa. "Daughter, about this weekend, I think you should come. We have a lot to talk about." Saturday dawned. With a crystal blue sky and a gentle breeze that swayed the treetops, Samuel woke earlier than usual, anxious for Melissa's arrival. It had been 3 months since he had seen his daughter in person, and the anticipation of the conversation they would have left him both excited and apprehensive. Around 10 o'clock, the sound of Melissa's car echoed along the dirt road leading to the ranch house. Samuel went out to greet her, and when she got out of the vehicle, his heart swelled with pride. At 30, Melissa was a determined, intelligent woman and carried in her gaze the same strength that Catherine had possessed. "Hi. Dad," she said, running to hug him. "How I missed this place." "I missed you too, my daughter. How was the trip?" "Smooth. I brought some things that might help us better understand the situation." Melissa opened the trunk of her car and took out a professional camera, a laptop, and a folder full of documents. "Dad, before anything else, I want you to know that I'm here as your daughter, not as a specialist coming to criticize your work. I know how much this ranch means to you, to our family." During lunch, lovingly prepared by Mary, father and daughter chatted about light topics, updating each other on the news in their lives, but both knew that the main conversation was yet to come. "Dad, tell me in detail what's been happening here." Samuel reported all the events of the past weeks: the disappearance of cattle, the failures in the electric fence, Cole's strange behavior, and finally, the encounter with the cub in the forest. "You saw the cub?" asked Melissa, her eyes shining with interest. "Dad, that's incredible. It means she chose your property as a safe territory to raise her young." "I'm not sure I see that as something positive, daughter." "But you should. Dad, it means your preserved area is functioning as it should. It's a sign that the local ecosystem is healthy. Melissa opened her laptop and showed her father a series of photos and maps. Look, Dad. These are the deforestation records in the region over the last 5 years. See this area here? She pointed to a region on the map. This was the original territory of this mountain lion. It was completely cleared to make way for a soybean farm. Samuel observed the images, feeling a growing discomfort in his chest. And here, continued Melissa, were her hunting routes. They were also eliminated. Dad, this mountain lion lost more than 80% of her natural territory in the last 2 years. And what does that have to do with me? Everything, Dad. Your ranch has one of the largest preserved forest areas in the region. For her, this is the only place where she can ensure her cubs' survival. Joe approached the table, bringing fresh coffee. Miss Melissa, sorry to interrupt, but may I add something? Of course, Joe, you know this region better than anyone. I was thinking about what you're saying. My grandfather always said that nature is wise. When animals start changing their behavior, it's because something is missing from the place where they live. Melissa smiled. Your grandfather was a wise man. That's exactly what's happening. That afternoon, Melissa convinced her father to take her to the place where he had found the cub. They mounted horses, Melissa on Star, a gentle mare that had belonged to her mother, and followed the trail that entered the preserved forest. Dad, look around. See how this area is full of life? Indeed, Samuel couldn't deny it. The contrast between the arid pastures and the lush forest was impressive. Here, the diversity of sounds, colors, and movements created a completely different environment. Arriving at the clearing where he had found the cub, they had a surprise. The mother was there, observing them from a safe distance. Melissa held her father's arm, asking for silence. Look at her, Dad. See how she's not showing aggression? She's just protecting the territory she chose to raise her cub. Samuel observed the mountain lion with different eyes. It was indeed a magnificent animal, powerful, but there was something in its posture that conveyed more exhaustion than threat. She's thin, murmured Melissa. She's probably spending a lot of energy looking for prey in unfamiliar territory. What do you suggest I do? Dad, I'm going to make you a proposal. How about turning part of this property into a private reserve? You would still be the owner, but you'd create an official sanctuary for local wildlife. Melissa, that would mean less productive land. It would also mean tax incentives, environmental recognition, and the possibility of developing ecotourism. Dad, you could be a pioneer in a new way of using the land. Samuel was silent, processing the proposal. It was a radical change from everything he knew, but for the first time, he couldn't find completely opposing arguments. Daughter, I need to think. Of course, Dad. But while you think, how about starting with simple measures? Installing monitoring cameras to track her behavior, creating an observation schedule, mapping the paths she uses. That night after dinner, father and daughter sat on the porch watching the stars. The silence was comfortable but laden with reflections. Dad, can I ask you a personal question? Of course, my daughter. Have you ever wondered what Mom would think about all this? Samuel sighed deeply. Catherine had always been more sensitive to environmental issues, more open to changes. Your mother, she always said that the land doesn't belong to us, that we are just its temporary guardians. And do you believe that? Samuel looked at the stars, then at the forest that stretched beyond the pastures. I'm beginning to believe that maybe she was right. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. Sunday dawned with a dense fog that covered the pastures like a ghostly blanket. Samuel woke before sunrise, restless. During the night, he had dreamed again of golden eyes and a strange feeling that something important was about to happen. Melissa was still sleeping in the room that had been hers during adolescence. Samuel decided not to wake her. He wanted to have a few moments alone to process everything they had discussed the day before. Walking through the kitchen, he prepared his morning coffee and stood watching through the window as the fog slowly dissipated. The electric fence had failed again during the night. Joe was already working on the repair as indicated by the distant sound of his tools. Another day, another problem. he murmured to himself. He decided he would go to the fence location to help Joe. Perhaps a little manual labor would help him organize his thoughts about Melissa's proposal. He mounted Cole, who for the first time in days seemed calmer. The horse followed the familiar trail without showing the usual nervousness, as if it also felt that something had changed in the environment. Arriving at the spot where Joe was working, Samuel dismounted and approached the damaged fence. What he saw left him perplexed. It wasn't just the bent posts that caught his attention, but the way the wires had been pressed. It was as if something very heavy had deliberately passed over, but carefully trying not to hurt itself. "Joe, did you see this here?" "Yes, boss. It's like she knew the wires are harmful and found a way to pass without getting hurt." "She?" "The mountain lion, boss. It can only be her." Samuel examined the marks more carefully. There was clear intelligence in the way the animal had overcome the electrical barrier. "Joe, can you continue here alone? I want to take a look at the forest area." "Sure, boss, but be careful out there." Samuel mounted Cole again and headed toward the preserved forest. He wanted to better understand the paths the mountain lion was using, perhaps find clues about her intentions. The forest was particularly quiet that morning. Even the birds seemed to have chosen to stay silent, creating an almost mystical atmosphere among the trees. Cole walked slowly, attentive, but without the nervousness of previous days. It was when they reached the clearing near the stream that everything changed. Cole stopped abruptly, ears up, trembling slightly. Samuel felt the animal's body stiffen beneath him and looked around, trying to identify what had caused the reaction. And then he saw her. The mountain lion was just 30 yards away, slowly emerging from the shadow of the trees. She was larger than she had seemed when observed from a distance, an imposing animal with powerful muscles moving beneath the golden fur spotted with black rosettes. But it wasn't the size of the animal that caught Samuel's attention. It was the eyes. Those golden eyes that he had seen so many times in dreams now observed him directly without aggression, but with an intensity that seemed to penetrate his soul. Cole began to back up, nervous but without panic. It was as if the horse recognized there was no immediate threat, just an inevitable encounter. Samuel dismounted slowly, keeping his movements smooth and controlled. Every fiber of his being told him to run, but something deeper kept him there, face to face with the most powerful creature in the forest. The mountain lion came a few steps closer, and Samuel could see that she was indeed thin, as Melissa had observed. Her breathing was slightly labored, and there was an exhaustion in her movements that spoke of difficult days searching for territory and food. For a few minutes that seemed eternal, man and animal observed each other in absolute silence. Samuel felt something extraordinary happening. It was as if he were having a conversation without words, a communication that went beyond human language. In the mountain lion's eyes, he didn't see the wild predator he had imagined all his life. He saw a tired mother, struggling to protect her cub in a world that was becoming increasingly smaller. He saw the ancient intelligence of a species that had inhabited these lands long before the first settlers arrived. And he saw, surprisingly, a kind of recognition, as if she too were assessing him, trying to understand his intentions. The mountain lion emitted a low sound, almost a sigh, and Samuel felt it was a form of communication. It wasn't a threat or submission, it was something like a request, an explanation, an attempt to establish an understanding. "I know," whispered Samuel, his voice emerging almost without him noticing. "I know you just want to protect your cub." As if she had understood, the mountain lion slightly tilted her head, her eyes softened, and she took a few steps to the side, showing the way to a specific direction in the forest. Samuel understood that she wanted him to follow her. Against all instincts of self-preservation, against decades of conditioning about the dangers of wildlife, Samuel began to walk in the direction indicated by the mountain lion. Cole followed him at a safe distance, clearly uncomfortable but trusting his owner's judgment. The mountain lion led them along trails that Samuel had never seen, secret paths of the forest that she knew as well as he knew the corners of his ranch. They walked for about 20 minutes until they reached a small natural grotto formed by ancient rocks, and there, sleeping peacefully on a bed of dry leaves, was the cub. It was even smaller than Samuel remembered, vulnerable and dependent. The mother approached her young, licked its head tenderly, and then looked again at Samuel. At that moment he understood everything. She wasn't just looking for territory, she was looking for a place where she could raise her cub in safety. And somehow she had chosen his ranch, had chosen to trust him. The revelation hit him like lightning. All his life he had seen nature as something to be controlled, dominated, shaped according to his needs. But there, in that sacred moment, he realized that he was actually part of something much larger, a delicate ecosystem where each creature had its role, including him. "You chose this place," he said softly, more to himself than to the mountain lion. "You chose me to protect your cub." The mountain lion emitted another low sound, almost a purr, and Samuel felt that he had been accepted, not as the owner of the land, but as a guardian, a temporary protector of something much more precious than any property. When he finally returned to the ranch house, Melissa was waiting for him, on the porch, concerned. "Dad, where were you? It's almost noon." Samuel looked at her with different eyes, not just as his daughter, but as someone who had always understood what he was just beginning to comprehend. "Daughter," he said, his voice laden with emotion, "I think it's time we talk seriously about that private reserve." The change in Samuel was immediate and profound. That Sunday afternoon, father and daughter sat on the porch with ranch maps spread across the table, planning what would be the first private environmental protection reserve in the Carson City region. "Dad, I can't believe you really changed your mind so quickly," said Melissa, still processing the transformation she had witnessed in her father. "Daughter, I saw something today that changed everything. I can no longer pretend that I'm the only owner of this land. We have to share the space." During the following hours, they worked together redesigning the use of the property. Samuel decided to transform 40% of the ranch into a permanent preservation area, maintaining the most productive pastures and creating ecological corridors that would connect the existing forest fragments. "I'll lose revenue from cattle," he admitted, "but maybe it's time to diversify. You mentioned ecotourism." "Yes?" "Dad, just imagine people coming from all over the country to see mountain lions in their natural habitat. Your ranch could become a model of sustainability." Joe, who had been called to participate in the conversation, initially showed concern. "Boss, I'm not questioning your decision, but what about the jobs? How will we keep all the employees?" "Joe, ecotourism will generate new jobs. We'll need guides, environmental monitors, staff for trail maintenance. You could coordinate that team." The foreman's eyes lit up. "I've always enjoyed showing the forest to visitors. My grandfather taught me to identify each plant, each animal track." On Monday, Samuel surprised everyone by announcing that he would hold a meeting with all the ranch employees. It was unprecedented. Normally, decisions were communicated through Joe. "Folks," he began in front of the 20 employees gathered in the yard, "I want to talk about important changes that will happen on the ranch." A murmur of concern ran through the group. Changes, in their experience, usually meant layoffs. "We're going to transform part of the ranch into an environmental protection reserve. This means that some of you will work in different activities, but everyone will remain employed." Mary, the cook, raised her hand. "Mr. Samuel, does this mean the mountain lion will stay around here?" "It means we're going to learn to live with her, Mary. She's not our enemy. She's a neighbor who needs space to live." In the following days, Samuel immersed himself in a completely new world. Melissa brought biologists from Grand Junction to survey the property's fauna and flora. What they discovered was impressive. Besides the mountain lion, the ranch was home to dozens of mammal species, hundreds of birds, and a diversity of plants that included several rare species. "Dad, your ranch is an ecological treasure," said Dr. Robert Smith, one of the biologists. "With proper management, it can become a center for research and conservation." Samuel also sought out Dr. Richard Miller, the veterinarian from the cooperative, to discuss the project. Samuel, I confess, I'm surprised. I didn't expect this change in your stance. Richard, I always thought that progress meant dominating nature. Now I realize that true progress is learning to work with it. And the other ranchers in the region, how are they reacting? Some think I've gone crazy, others are curious. Just yesterday, Arnold from the neighboring ranch came here wanting to know if the project could work. The news of the transformation of Good Hope Ranch spread quickly through the region. The reaction was mixed. Some ranchers saw Samuel as a visionary, others as a man who was wasting a productive property. On Thursday, they received an unexpected visit. 2 trucks arrived at the ranch bringing representatives from the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Environmental Protection Agency. Mr. Anderson, said the team coordinator, Dr. Francis Sullivan, we heard about your project and came to offer technical and financial support. Financial support? Yes, there are incentive programs for landowners who create private reserves. In addition, your ranch can become a model for other properties in the region. Samuel could hardly believe. To agencies that he had always seen as enemies were offering partnership. There's also the possibility of scientific research, continued Dr. Francis. Universities from across the United States would like to study the recovery of degraded habitats. During the weekend, Samuel and Melissa installed the first monitoring cameras in the forest. It was exciting to know that they could track the behavior of the mountain lion and her cub without interfering with their activities. Dad, look, said Melissa, showing the first images captured by the cameras. She's using the trails we created to connect the forest areas. In the images, it was possible to see the mountain lion walking calmly along the trails, sometimes accompanied by the cub, which was already visibly stronger and braver. She understood that this is a safe place, murmured Samuel, moved. More than that, Dad, she trusts you. That night, Samuel called his brother in Helena, telling him about the changes on the ranch. Have you gone crazy, Samuel? Turning pasture into forest? Anthony, it's not about turning pasture into forest. It's about finding a balance. I'll continue raising cattle, but in a more sustainable way. And if it goes wrong? If it goes wrong, at least I tried to do something different. But I have a good feeling about this. The following Sunday, Cole demonstrated something that surprised even Samuel. During the morning ride, the horse spontaneously headed for the forest area where the mountain lion's den was located. There he stood still, observing silently. The mountain lion appeared a few minutes later, walking calmly toward the stream to drink water. Seeing Samuel and Cole, she stopped, looked at them for a few seconds, and then continued on her way, showing no sign of aggression or fear. Look at that, boy, said Samuel, stroking Cole's neck. She accepts us as part of the neighborhood. The tiene. Horse whinnied softly as if agreeing. At that moment, Samuel understood that the true wealth of his ranch wasn't just in the cattle he raised or the land he owned, but in the life he was able to protect and preserve. And for the first time in many years, he felt he was on the right path to honor Catherine's memory and leave a truly valuable legacy for Melissa. The transformation was just beginning, but the foundations of a new way of living were already being built. 3 months after the transformation of Good Hope Ranch into a private reserve, the first results began to appear. Samuel woke every morning eager to check the images from the monitoring cameras, which revealed a diversity of wildlife that he had never imagined existed on his property. Dad, look what arrived today, said Melissa, waving an official letter. The final approval from the Fish and Wildlife Service for the status of Private Natural Heritage Reserve. Samuel held the document with trembling hands. It was official. Good Hope Ranch was now part of the national network of protected areas. 40 years building this ranch one way. And in 3 months we changed everything, he murmured, still processing the magnitude of the transformation. And we changed it for the better, Dad. However, not everything was smooth sailing. The previous week, Samuel had faced his first major challenge as a conservationist. During a meeting of the local cooperative, he had been harshly criticized by some ranchers from the region. Samuel, you're setting a bad example, Arnold Fisher, owner of a neighboring property, had said. These environmentalists will use your ranch as an excuse to interfere with ours too. Arnold, it's not interference, it's partnership. My productivity hasn't decreased, it's just shifted focus. Productivity? You turned pasture into wilderness. That's not productivity. The discussion had heated up with other ranchers taking sides. Samuel had returned home dejected, questioning whether he was really on the right path. It was Joe who helped him regain his confidence. "Boss, you want to know what I think? I think for the first time in years, the ranch is truly alive." "What do you mean, Joe? Before it was just grass and cattle. Now there are birds singing, animals walking the trails, people coming from far away just to see. Isn't that life?" Indeed, the activity on the ranch had increased considerably. Researchers from 3 different universities had established long-term projects on the property. Students regularly arrived to do field work, and on weekends families from Carson City and even other cities came for wildlife observation tours. "Mr. Samuel," said Mary in the kitchen, "you'll have to expand the house. With so many visitors, there's not enough room at the table anymore." And he was a good problem to have. Revenue from ecotourism already represented 20% of the ranch's income, partially compensating for the reduction in the herd. But the real test of Samuel's new philosophy came when he least expected it. On Thursday, Dr. Robert Smith arrived at the ranch with a worried expression. "Samuel, we have a problem. The cameras captured images of a second mountain lion on the property." "Isn't that good?" "Normally it would be, but this is an adult male. And by the body language, he seems to be disputing territory with our female." The images showed an imposing male, clearly larger than the female, marking territory dangerously close to the den where she was raising her cub. What does this mean in practice? It could mean confrontation. If the male decides he wants this territory for himself, he might expel the female and cub, or worse, he might try to eliminate the cub so he can mate with the female. Samuel felt his stomach freeze. After all they had built, nature presented a challenge that was beyond his control. Is there anything we can do? Very little. Direct. Interference would be harmful to both animals, but we can monitor closely and, if necessary, call in specialists in wildlife management. During the following days, the tension on the ranch was palpable. The cameras showed the 2 felines avoiding each other, marking territory in a complex dance of dominance and survival. Melissa arrived on Saturday, bringing a feline behavior specialist from Montana State University. "Dr. August," said Samuel to the researcher, "I need to know, did my decision to create this reserve put the animals in danger?" "On the contrary, Mr. Anderson. What's happening is natural. 2 mountain lions disputing the same territory is a sign that the habitat is healthy, capable of supporting more than one individual." "But what about the cub?" "Females with cubs are surprisingly determined. She won't give up easily." As if fate wanted to prove the specialist's words, on Sunday morning the cameras captured an extraordinary scene. The female, with the now grown cub by her side, confronted the male in a clearing near the stream. There was no violence, it was a demonstration of strength and determination. The female positioned herself between the male and the cub, growling low, clearly communicating her intentions. The male, after a few minutes of tension, backed off. He began to move toward the more distant part of the reserve, apparently accepting to share the territory. "She won," murmured Samuel, observing the images with admiration. "She didn't win," corrected Dr. August. "She negotiated. Now you have 2 mountain lion territories on your property. That's extraordinary." The news spread quickly through the scientific community. Good Hope Ranch had become the first location in the region to sustain 2 adult mountain lions in adjacent territories. "Dad," said Melissa, "do you realize what you've accomplished? In less than 6 months, you transformed an ordinary ranch into a sanctuary that can serve as a model for the entire country." That night, Samuel went out for his usual walk around the property. Cole accompanied him, as always. As they passed through the forest area, they heard 2 distinct growls echoing in the night, one deeper, one sharper. "2 neighbors communicating," he said to Cole, who responded with a low neigh. Back at the house, he found a message on his cell phone. It was from Arnold Fisher, the rancher who had criticized him at the cooperative. "Samuel, I've been thinking about what you said. Could you come over to my ranch? I want to talk about this conservation project." Samuel smiled. The change was gradually spreading, and he knew he was just at the beginning of a journey that would transform not just his ranch, but the entire region. Looking at Catherine's portrait on the dresser, he whispered, "I think you would be proud of the direction. Things have taken, my love." The night breeze seemed to carry a loving response, confirming that he was finally on the right path. 1 year had passed since Samuel Anderson made the decision that would change his life forever. Good Hope Ranch now welcomed visitors from all over the United States and even from abroad, interested in learning about the conservation model that had become a national reference. That Saturday morning, Samuel woke with a special feeling in his chest. It was the day of the official inauguration of the ranch's Environmental Education Center, a project that had begun as a dream and was now becoming reality. "Good morning, Dad," said Melissa, entering the kitchen with a radiant smile. "Ready?" "For the big day." "Ready and anxious," he replied, pouring coffee for both of them. "Who would have thought that one day we'd have a school here on the ranch?" The Environmental Education Center had been built with sustainably harvested wood and solar energy, following principles of sustainability. It would be used to receive student groups, train new environmental guides, and develop research on conservation. "Dad, there's a surprise." "For you outside," said Melissa, barely containing her excitement. On the porch, Samuel found Joe with a broad smile, holding an engraved wooden sign. "Boss, the entrance sign is ready." Samuel read aloud, "Good Hope Private Reserve, where nature and man walk together." "Joe, it's perfect. You have a knack for this." The foreman, who now coordinated the team of environmental guides, had discovered a natural talent for environmental education. His explanations about the local fauna and flora enchanted visitors, especially children. During the morning, guests began to arrive for the inauguration. Representatives from the Fish and Wildlife Service, researchers from various universities, other ranchers from the region who had become interested in the project, and even the mayor of Carson City. But the biggest surprise came when an unfamiliar van stopped in front of the house. "Dad, you won't believe who's here," said Melissa, running toward the vehicle. 3 people whom Samuel immediately recognized stepped out of the van. They were journalists from a national television program about the environment. "Mr. Anderson," said the reporter, "we're from Nature TV. We've come to do a special report about your ranch. Your story is inspiring ranchers across the country." The inauguration ceremony was moving. Samuel, who had never liked speaking in public, surprised everyone with a touching speech. "A year ago, I was a man who believed that progress meant dominating nature. Today, I've learned that true progress is learning to live in harmony with it. This ranch is no longer mine, it's ours. All of ours, the animals that live here, the future generations who will inherit this planet." After the speech, the guests were taken for a tour of the reserve's trails. Joe, now wearing his environmental guide uniform, led the group with visible pride. "This is where our 2 mountain lions regularly pass," he explained. "The female, whom we call Hope, and the male, whom we call Courage. Hope's cub is almost an adult now and should establish his own territory soon." As if having heard the conversation, Hope appeared in a distant clearing, calmly observing the group of visitors. There were murmurs of admiration and the sound of several cameras. "Isn't she afraid of people?" someone asked. "She's not afraid because she's learned that she's safe here," Joe replied. "This is her territory, and we are just respectful visitors." During lunch prepared by Mary with organic ingredients produced on the ranch itself, Samuel chatted with Arnold Fisher, who had become one of the project's biggest supporters. "Samuel, I already have 15 ranchers in the region interested in creating their own private reserves. You've started a revolution." "It wasn't a revolution, Arnold. It was an evolution. We're just learning to be better stewards of the land entrusted to us." In the afternoon came the most anticipated moment, the recording of the interview for national television. "Mr. Anderson," asked the reporter, "what would you say to other ranchers who still have doubts about conservation projects?" I would say that conservation isn't the opposite of production. It's intelligent production. My ranch continues to generate income, create jobs, support families, but now it also protects wildlife, educates children, contributes to scientific research, and will leave a better planet for our grandchildren. And what was the moment that most marked you on this journey? Samuel was silent for a few seconds, remembering the encounter with Hope in the forest. It was when I looked into the eyes of a mountain lion and understood that she wasn't my enemy. She was my neighbor, asking only for respect and space to exist. At that moment, I understood that we are not owners of nature. We are part of it. At the end of the day, after all the guests had left, Samuel, Melissa, and Joe sat on the porch to relax. "Dad," said Melissa, "I have news for you. I received an offer to coordinate a national program for private reserves. It would be based on the model of our ranch." "That's wonderful, daughter. Did you accept?" "Not yet. The offer is good, but it would mean traveling a lot, spending less time here." "Melissa," Samuel interrupted, "you have to accept. Your mother always said that when we have an opportunity to make a difference in the world, we can't waste it." "But what about the ranch? And you?" "The ranch will still be here. Joe and I have already learned everything you taught us. And I have the feeling that this is just the first phase of my new journey." That night, after Melissa went to bed, Samuel went out for his usual nightly walk. Cole accompanied him, as always. The horse, now more than 15 years old, had become a kind of ambassador for the ranch, adored by visitors who came especially to meet him. Walking around the property under the starlight, Samuel reflected on everything that had changed. The ranch was more prosperous than ever, but in a completely different way. The employees were more motivated, working not just for a paycheck, but for a cause. The local community had begun to see conservation as an opportunity, not a threat. Stopping near the forest, he heard the night sounds of the forest, owls, crickets, and in the distance, the soft growl of one of the mountain lions communicating. It was a symphony that he had learned to value and protect. "Thank you," he whispered to the night, not knowing exactly to whom he was directing his gratitude, whether to Catherine, to Hope, to Melissa, or to life itself that had given him a second chance to make a difference. Returning home, he found a message on his cell phone. It was from a rancher in Wyoming, asking for guidance on creating a private reserve on his property. Samuel smiled. The seed had been planted, and now it was germinating in distant lands. Looking once more at Catherine's portrait on the dresser, he said softly, "I think we did it, my love. We managed to transform our small part of the world into a better place." And, for the first time in a long time, Samuel slept with the absolute certainty that his life had a greater purpose than just accumulating material goods. It had the purpose of protecting life in all its forms, ensuring that future generations could witness the same wild beauty that he now called neighbor. Good Hope Ranch had become much more than a rural property. It had become a symbol that it is possible to change, grow, and find harmony between human development and nature preservation. And this was just the beginning.